The house had grown used to silence. It sat on a quiet street near the sea, a small white cottage with blue shutters, where the only regular sounds were the ticking of the kitchen clock and the soft hum of the refrigerator. In this house lived Margaret, 68 years old, with careful hands and tired eyes. Her day began the same way almost every morning. She woke up before the sun, not because she needed to, but because her body no longer slept deeply. She sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, feeling the cool floor under her feet. Beside her, the other side of the mattress stayed untouched, the dent from another body long gone. She did not look at it for too long. She made tea in a chipped mug with small blue flowers. While the water boiled, she glanced toward the hallway, where her late husband's coat still hung on a hook. It had been there for 10 years. She dusted it every week. She told herself it was because she hated dust, but she knew it was more than that. In the kitchen, she placed 2 slices of bread in the toaster and set the table. For a brief second, she almost took out 2 plates. Her hand stopped in midair. She lowered it quietly and took only one. The toaster popped. She spread a thin layer of jam. She did not eat quickly. Small bites, long pauses. The clock on the wall beat out the seconds in a steady rhythm, louder in the stillness. After breakfast, she walked to the window. The sea was not far, maybe 15 minutes by foot, but she rarely went down to the shore in the mornings. She preferred to watch it from a distance, just a slice of pale blue beyond the roofs of neighboring houses. The sky was clear, and a faint line of light sat on the water's edge. Her garden was her pride. She stepped outside with a small watering can, her slippers making soft sounds on the stone path. Roses climbed the fence, and lavender grew along the front edge of the yard. She touched each plant gently, as if greeting an old friend. The soil smelled fresh. It gave her a sense of purpose that felt safe and simple. Neighbors passed by sometimes. "Morning, Margaret," Mr. Henderson called from the sidewalk, walking his old brown dog. "Good morning," she replied with a slight smile. Their words were polite and brief. People in the town liked her. They said she was kind. They also said she was strong. Because she had lived alone since her husband passed away, she accepted the compliments, but they slid off her like rain on glass. Strength, to her, did not feel like the right word. It felt more like surviving. After tending the garden, she went back inside and straightened the living room. The framed photos on the shelf showed a younger woman beside a tall man with laughing eyes. They were standing on beaches, in front of birthday cakes, next to Christmas trees, years folded into still images. Sometimes, she dusted those frames more often than the others. She picked one up and studied it. Her husband's arm was around her shoulders, pulling her close as if he never planned to let her go. His smile was wide and easy. She remembered the sound of his voice clearly, the way he hummed when shaving, the way he whistled a tune when he washed the car. "Stop it," she whispered to herself, setting the frame back in its place. She was not harsh with herself, only firm. If she let her mind wander too far into the past, the ache in her chest grew heavy. She had learned to keep memories in small portions, like sugar in her tea, just enough to sweeten, not enough to overwhelm. By late morning, she prepared a light lunch. Often it was soup from the night before, warmed on the stove. She ate at the small table by the window, listening to the faint sound of a radio program. The voices on the radio spoke about news, weather, and people she would never meet. She liked that. It was a window into a world that did not ask anything from her. Her daughter, Claire, called about twice a week. "Hi, Mom," Claire's bright voice filled the kitchen one Tuesday. "Hello, dear," Margaret answered, sitting down, phone pressed to her ear. "How are you doing today?" "I'm fine, The next morning arrived like all the others, quiet and uneventful. Soft light filtered through the lace curtains in Margaret's bedroom. She lay still for a moment, listening to the distant call of seabirds. It was a gentle sound, yet it stirred something unsettled inside her, like a small ripple across still water. She rose slowly and wrapped a thin cardigan around her shoulders. The floor was cool beneath her feet. In the hallway, she paused near her husband's coat again. Her fingers brushed the sleeve. The fabric felt slightly rough, familiar. She let her hand fall before the memory grew heavier. In the kitchen, she made tea as usual. Steam rose from the cup, warming her face. She sat at the table, staring at the rising curls of vapor. They twisted and faded quickly, just like the days behind her. She took a slow sip, tasting the faint sweetness of honey. Outside, the morning breeze shook the leaves. Margaret watched them move as she ate a small breakfast. Something in her chest felt tight, though she could not name the feeling. She pushed the plate a little farther away and looked toward the window again. Later, she stepped into the garden with her watering can. The roses still bloomed in deep red, the lavender still held its scent. Everything was the same. Yet for the first time in a while, she felt as if the world around her was changing, even if she wasn't. She crouched to remove a dry leaf. The soil was cool against her hand. "This garden grows whether I do anything or not," she murmured. The sound of her own voice surprised her. She almost never spoke to herself outdoors. Mr. Henderson walked by with his dog again. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said. "Yes," she answered, though she wasn't sure she believed it. When she returned inside, she drifted from room to room without intention. She opened a drawer, closed it again. She moved a pillow on the sofa, only to adjust it back to its original place. She picked up a book but did not begin reading. Her focus slipped away before the first page. The restlessness settled deeper. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet ache, a soft knock on a closed door inside her. She tried to ignore it. She had become good at ignoring things that stirred the past or suggested change. But this morning, it stayed with her like a shadow. She walked into the living room and sat in her husband's old chair. She rarely did that. The cushion sank slightly, shaped by years of his weight. She rested her hands on the armrests and closed her eyes. Memories drifted in his laugh, the warmth of his hand, the way he used to read the newspaper aloud to her. She opened her eyes quickly, breathing out. "Not today," she whispered. The phone rang, startling her. It was her friend Ellen. "Margaret, we're going to the community center today," Ellen said cheerfully. "They're having a book exchange and a little social gathering. Why don't you come?" "Oh, I don't know," Margaret replied. "I have things to do here." "Things like what?" Ellen asked, not unkindly. "Oh, just things," Margaret said, unsure herself. Ellen chuckled softly. "Come with us next time, all right?" "We'll see," Margaret answered, ending the call. Margaret woke earlier than usual the next day. The restlessness from the day before had not faded. It lingered in her chest like a soft pressure, urging her to move, to step outside her usual path. She made tea but didn't finish it. She watered the garden but didn't linger. She walked through her house, touching small objects, books, a framed photo, a folded blanket, as if searching for a reason to stay home. None came. At mid-morning, she stood at the front door holding her keys. She hesitated. Her outings were usually planned and purposeful. Today had no such plan. Something inside her whispered that she needed to leave, even if she did not know why. She stepped outside and closed the door gently behind her. The air felt cool and crisp. She took a long breath, filling her lungs. The walk to town was familiar, yet today, each step felt new, as if her body was waking from a long sleep. When she reached the main street, she paused. Shops lined the sidewalk: a bakery, a small cafe, a thrift store, and farther down, the community center. She had passed that building hundreds of times but rarely entered. The idea of going inside today surprised her. Still, she found her feet moving in that direction. Just for a moment, she murmured to herself. Inside, the community center was warm and softly lit. Posters for events hung on the walls: craft classes, book exchanges, social gatherings. The quiet hum of distant conversation echoed through the hallway. She walked slowly past the reception desk, her eyes scanning the room. A long table stood near the window filled with books. Bright covers, worn spines, handwritten notes tucked inside some of them. A sign read, "Take one, leave one." She smiled faintly. She had always loved the idea of books traveling through many hands. As she reached for a novel on the edge of the table, another hand touched the same book. "Oh," she said, startled. A man beside her let out a soft laugh. "I'm sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to surprise you." He looked to be around 70, tall, with gentle lines around his eyes and a calm presence. He wore a blue jacket and held a small stack of books under his arm. "No harm done," Margaret replied, stepping back slightly. He lifted the book they had both reached for. "Were you interested in this one? I can let you have it." "Oh, no," she said quickly. "I was only looking." He smiled. "Then how about this? I'll take it only if you promise to tell me later whether I made a good choice." She blinked, surprised by his light tone. "That seems fair," she replied. He set the book atop his stack. "I'm Edward," he said, offering a mild nod instead of a handshake. "Margaret," she answered. "Well, Margaret," he continued, "I'm new in town. Moved here last month." The following week passed quietly, yet Margaret found her thoughts returning to the community center, more often than she expected. She remembered the soft humor in Edward's voice, the easy way he spoke, the warmth in his eyes. She told herself it was nothing, just a pleasant conversation with a polite stranger. Still, something inside her felt gently pulled back toward that place. On Thursday morning, she found herself putting on a nicer sweater than usual, a soft beige one she saved for church or family visits. She noticed what she was doing and shook her head. "Don't be foolish," she whispered to herself. Yet she did not change out of it. She walked to the community center again, this time with a steady pace. As she entered the building, the familiar smell of old books and fresh coffee washed over her. A few people milled around the lobby. She scanned the room quietly, pretending she wasn't searching for anyone in particular. Then she saw him. Edward stood near a bulletin board, reading a flyer with his glasses perched halfway down his nose. He looked calm, absorbed in the words. She felt her heart lift unexpectedly. She approached slowly. "Hello again," she said. Edward turned and smiled instantly, as if he had been hoping to see her. "Margaret. Good morning. I was just trying to make sense of this pottery class schedule. It seems more complicated than it should be." She chuckled. "Most schedules are." "Then I feel better," he said. "Thought it was just me." They stood side by side for a moment. The room felt warmer. He gestured toward a small seating area. "Would you like to sit?" "Only if you have time." "I have time," she said, realizing it was true. They sat at a small round table near the window. Sunlight streamed across the floor. Margaret folded her hands neatly in her lap. Edward placed his newly borrowed books on the table. "I'm still getting used to this town," he said. "It's quieter than where I used to live." "It's been quiet for me as well," she replied. "Do you like the quiet?" She hesitated. "Sometimes." He nodded as if he understood more than her words said. "I like quiet places too," he said. "But quiet doesn't always mean peaceful." His tone was gentle, not probing. Still, it touched a familiar place in her chest. They talked for a while about books, gardens, small things in life that didn't require heavy explanation. His voice had a soft rhythm. He listened with genuine interest, not out of politeness. When she mentioned her roses, he said, "Roses are stubborn. They bloom beautifully, but only if someone loves them properly." She felt her face grow warm. She looked down at her hands, unsure why his words affected her so deeply. At one point, he grew quiet. His eyes drifted toward the window. "My wife loved gardens," he said. "She passed 3 years ago." Margaret looked at him gently. "I'm sorry," she said. He nodded. "Thank you. I still feel like she's." Over the next 2 weeks, Margaret and Edward settled into an easy pattern. They met at the community center by chance, then by quiet intention. A shared coffee, a short walk, small conversations that carried gentle warmth. Margaret found herself looking forward to these moments, more than she cared to admit, even to herself. One Saturday morning, she baked a small batch of lemon cookies. She placed a few in a tin, and smiled shyly at the thought of giving them to Edward. It felt strange, almost girlish, but pleasant. She dressed neatly and walked to the community center, with a hopeful lightness in her chest. But Edward wasn't there. His usual seat by the window was empty. The book table stood quiet. No blue jacket, no warm voice greeting her. She waited for a while, pretending to browse books she wasn't reading. After 20 minutes, she stepped outside, the cookie tin still in her bag. "Perhaps he's busy," she murmured. The next day she returned. Still no sign of him. She asked a volunteer casually, "Have you seen the man who comes here often, tall, glasses, blue jacket?" The volunteer shook her head. "Not lately," she said. Margaret nodded politely and walked away. Her heart dipped, just slightly. She told herself she was being silly. They were not obligated to see each other. He owed her nothing, and yet the quiet absence carved a small ache in her chest. That night, she sat in her husband's old chair with a blanket over her knees. The house felt larger than usual. She kept thinking about Edward, his thoughtful pauses, his gentle humor, the way he listened. She whispered to the empty room, "Don't be foolish, Margaret. People come and go." But the words didn't remove the heaviness inside her. On Wednesday morning, she tried again. Still no Edward. She picked up a book from the table but couldn't focus on the words. Her eyes drifted toward the entrance again and again. As she left, she noticed a small bench under a tree. She sat there longer than she meant to. Wind rustled the leaves above her, and the scent of early spring filled the air. She wondered if she'd done something wrong, if she had said something that discouraged him. The thought made her stomach tighten. She had not felt this kind of insecurity in years. That evening, her daughter called. "Mom, you sound tired," Claire said. "A long day, that's all," Margaret answered. "You should rest more. Maybe see some friends?" Yes, she said quietly. Maybe. After the call, she placed the phone down and stared at her reflection in the window. The woman. 4 days passed before Margaret gathered the courage to return to the community center. She told herself she was going only to browse books, not to look for anyone. She even practiced her expression in the mirror, calm, neutral, unaffected. But as she walked up the familiar steps, her heart tapped anxiously beneath her sweater. Inside, the building was quiet. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting soft patterns on the floor. She scanned the room without meaning to. No blue jacket, no tall figure, no warm smile waiting for her. She exhaled slowly and turned toward the book table. She reached for a novel with trembling fingers. Margaret. Her heart jumped. She turned quickly. Edward stood a few steps away, looking thinner than before, slightly pale. His eyes showed both relief and hesitation. He lifted a hand in a small wave. "Hello," he said softly. She stared at him, unsure whether to feel grateful or hurt. "You've been gone," she said quietly. It was not an accusation, just a truth that sat heavily between them. Edward lowered his gaze. "Yes, I'm sorry." He gestured toward a quiet corner near an empty bench. "May we sit?" Margaret followed him slowly. They sat side by side, a careful distance between them. The air felt fragile, as if a single wrong word could break the moment. Edward rested his hands on his knees. "I should have called," he began, "or told you something. But I didn't. That wasn't fair." Margaret looked at him, her voice steady but soft. "I thought maybe I had done something." His head snapped up. "No, no, you didn't. Not at all." He paused, breath catching slightly. "I've been dealing with something I didn't want to bring into." He struggled for the right words. "Into whatever this is between us." Margaret's fingers tightened around her purse strap. "What is it, Edward?" He swallowed. "I have a heart condition," he said. "Early stage, but serious enough that my doctor wants me monitored. I've been going through tests, adjusting medications, and I didn't want." He hesitated, voice trembling near the end. "I didn't want you to worry." Margaret felt the room still around her. Her breath came quietly, controlled. "You were trying to protect me," she said. "Trying," he admitted. "But I think I only made things harder. For both of us." She studied his face, lines of fatigue around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. His usual gentle humor was absent. Instead, he looked vulnerable, almost ashamed. "Edward," she said softly, "why didn't you tell me?" He rubbed his palms together, struggling. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd step back, or feel sorry for me, or decide you didn't want to be around someone who might become complicated." The last word broke a little in his throat. Margaret sat quietly for a long moment. She let his confession settle, not rushing to fix or soften it. She understood fear. She had lived with it too: fear of loss, fear of change, fear of opening her heart, only to watch it crack again. Finally, she placed her hands gently on her lap. "Edward," she said, her voice steady, "life already took enough from me. And from you. I don't want fear taking any more." He blinked. The next days unfolded with a gentler pace. Margaret found herself walking more often, not out of restlessness now, but out of a quiet need to breathe the world in. She was not sure what she and Edward were becoming, but the heaviness in her heart had eased. Truth had given her room to feel again, carefully, but honestly. One cool afternoon, she received a small note in her mailbox. It was written in steady, clear handwriting. "If you feel up to it, I'll be at the shore path around 3. No pressure, just company. Edward." Margaret held the note for a long moment. She felt a soft warmth spread in her chest, something tender, something hopeful. She placed the note carefully on her small table and reached for her coat. When she arrived at the shore path, Edward was already there, sitting on a wooden bench overlooking the quiet sea. He stood when he saw her, his face lighting with unmistakable relief. "Margaret," he said warmly. "Hello, Edward," she replied. They began walking side by side. The gravel path crunched softly beneath their feet. Seagulls cried overhead, circling gently in the wind. The water moved in slow waves, touching the shore again and again like a familiar rhythm. For a while, neither spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable. It felt steady. At last, Edward cleared his throat. "I've been thinking a lot," he said. "About what?" she asked. He kept his eyes on the horizon. "About whether I should step back, whether it would be kinder to you. But every time I imagine that, it feels wrong." Margaret listened quietly, her hands folded in front of her. He continued, his voice low. "I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to bring fear into your life." She stopped walking and turned to face him. Edward, she said gently, fear doesn't disappear by running from it. It disappears when we walk through it with someone. He took a slow breath, absorbing her words. Are you sure? No, she answered honestly. But certainty isn't what matters. Choosing to try that matters more. A soft wind moved between them, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. They resumed walking. Edward's steps seemed less hesitant now. After a few minutes, he spoke again. I spent years caring for my wife during her illness. I remember the nights of worry, the hospitals, the silence. Part of me is afraid of putting someone else through that. Margaret's heart tightened, not with fear, but with understanding. She placed a hand lightly on his arm. You're not your illness, she said, and I am not the same woman I was 10 years ago. I learned that pain doesn't last forever, and neither does joy. But companionship is worth the risk. Edward stopped walking. He looked at her with eyes full of gratitude, and something, deeper something he wasn't ready to name. I'm grateful for you, he said softly. She smiled, shy but warm. And I for you. They continued their walk. Their pace found a quiet harmony. Margaret felt something inside her loosen, something that had been clenched for years. When they reached the end of the path, Edward nodded toward a small wooden bench overlooking the water. Sit with me? I'd like that, she said. They sat down together. The setting sun painted the waves gold. Edward rested his hands on his lap. I don't know what tomorrow brings, he admitted. None of us do, she whispered. He turned to her. But I'd like to see you tomorrow. And the next day, if you'd allow it. A gentle stirring moved through her chest. A few months passed, each one folding gently into the next. Margaret's days no longer moved in the dull rhythm they once had. They now carried a soft pulse, quiet, steady, full of small moments that warmed her heart. She and Edward met often, sometimes for a simple walk, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just to sit together and watch the world move. Their bond grew not through grand gestures but through ordinary kindness. Edward learned how she liked her tea weak, with a touch of honey. Margaret learned that he hummed when he was deep in thought, a habit he didn't realize he had. They spoke about their pasts without fear, and about their futures, without pretending to know the answers. On a mild spring afternoon, Edward invited her for a picnic by the sea. Nothing fancy, he had said, just sandwiches and a view. She agreed with a quiet smile. When Margaret arrived at the shore, the sunlight danced on the waves in bright patterns. Edward had set a small blanket on the grass near the rocks. A simple basket sat beside him. You picked a beautiful spot, she said. Only the best for good company, he replied with a soft grin. They sat together, the sound of the tide rising and falling in a slow, soothing rhythm. The breeze lifted the edges of the blanket. Margaret unfolded her sandwich and took a small bite. This reminds me of picnics I used to take with my family, she said. Edward nodded gently. Me too. Funny how the smallest things bring the biggest memories. They ate quietly for a while. Edward watched the water, his expression thoughtful. Margaret, he said at last, I've been wanting to say something. She set her sandwich down, sensing his seriousness. What is it? She asked. He clasped his hands loosely in his lap. I don't know how long my health will stay steady, he began. Some days are better than others. I won't pretend otherwise. Margaret listened without interrupting, her gaze steady on his. But I do know this, Edward continued. These months with you, they've brought a kind of peace I wasn't sure I'd ever feel again. His voice softened. I don't need certainty to be happy. I just need your company, for as long as life allows. A warm ache filled Margaret's chest. She reached over and gently placed her hand on top of his. Edward, she said, I've lived a long time thinking my story was finished. But you've shown me that a heart can still grow, even after loss. He squeezed her hand lightly. She continued, her voice quiet but firm. I don't know what tomorrow brings either. But today I'm grateful. And I'm willing to walk forward with you, wherever the path leads. Edward's eyes brightened, not with tears, but with relief and tenderness. Then we walked together, he whispered. Yes, she replied. Together. They sat side by side, hand in hand, watching the sun lower itself toward the horizon. The sky shifted from blue to gold, then to a gentle rose color. The waves glimmered under the fading light. For Margaret, it felt as if time had opened a quiet door she had once believed forever closed. Behind it was not youth returned, nor the past restored, but something just as precious, a chance to feel alive again. Her heart, once wrapped in years of stillness, now beat with a soft courage. Not the courage of bold leaps, but the courage of choosing hope after years of silence. As the first star appeared in the evening sky, Edward looked at her with a tender smile. I never expected this.